The Atlanta rain beat a relentless rhythm against the window of Eshe Dubois' cramped, dimly lit apartment. Inside, a different kind of storm raged. At just 21, alone and terrified, Eshe lay on a thin mattress, her body racked with an agony that had nothing to do with the weather. Then came the first cry, tiny yet piercing, followed by another, and then, impossibly, a third. 3 babies. 3 impossibly small, perfect girls. Eshe's heart swelled with a fierce primal love, but her gaze fell upon the sparse, crumbling walls, the empty pantry. A whisper of despair echoed in her mind. How can I love you when I cannot feed you? The question was a dagger, twisting with the overwhelming, terrifying reality of her situation. Days later, the stench of desperation clung to Eshe as she navigated the bustling local market, her stomach hollow, her mind reeling. She clutched the few meager coins in her pocket, knowing they wouldn't buy nearly enough. As she passed a stall overflowing with vibrant produce she couldn't afford, 2 women's hushed voices drifted to her. The Sterlings, you know, Thaddeus and Vivian, still no children, heard they've been trying for 14 years. The other woman leaned in conspiratorially. They'd do anything, they say. Even bend the rules, twist a few arms, for an heir. Imagine that kind of money, and no one to leave it to. As she froze, the words sinking in like stones. A dangerous, calculating hope flickered within her. A desperate idea taking root, battling with a profound sense of unease. That night, back in her cold apartment, Eshe looked at her 3 sleeping daughters. Zola, Amara, Kiana. She whispered their names. A silent prayer. The overheard conversation about the Sterlings now pulsed in her mind. A terrible, strategic solution. It was an impossible choice, a searing betrayal of her own heart, yet the only path she saw for their survival. With trembling fingers, she took a tiny, almost invisible pen. Gently, carefully, she made a faint, identifying mark on each baby's left palm. A secret promise, a hidden signature. Her tears fell silently, but her resolve hardened. I will find you. I will know you. And one day I will show the world what they did to us. It was a vow etched deeper than any mark on skin. The next evening, the rain still poured, washing over the imposing gates of the Sterlings' grand Atlanta home. Eshe, soaked to the bone, her ragged clothes clinging to her, felt a fresh wave of terror as she approached the ornate front door, a wicker basket heavy in her arms. Vivian Sterling, pristine and elegant, opened it. Her eyes widened, scanning Eshe's bedraggled appearance, then dropping to the 3 tiny bundles. They're mine, Eshe whispered, her voice raw with exhaustion and shame. I heard you longed for children. Please, they deserve better than me, a life I cannot give. Vivian's face contorted into a mask of shock and pity, but Eshe, even in her despair, saw it, a calculating glint in the woman's eyes. Triplets? A miracle, Vivian thought, her gaze lingering on the precious cargo. Days later, Eshe sat in Thaddeus Sterling's private study, the room opulent, suffocating. Thaddeus, a man whose presence radiated cold authority, slid a stack of complex legal papers across the polished mahogany. This is final, Miss Dubois, he stated, his voice devoid of warmth. No contact, no regrets, for their sake. He emphasized clauses that stripped her of any rights, any future claim, exploiting her vulnerability, her legal ignorance. Every word was a hammer blow, sealing her fate. Eshe's hand trembled as she signed, her exhaustion profound. But deep within her, beneath the despair, a spark of defiance flickered. For now, she thought, her gaze meeting Vivian's, a silent promise already forming in her heart. Back in her small, empty apartment, the silence was deafening, a physical weight pressing down on Eshe. The cribs were gone, the tiny blankets, the scent of her babies. Grief, raw and overwhelming, tore at her, but then her fingers instinctively went to her own left palm, tracing the faint, almost invisible mark she had made there, mirroring her daughter's. She remembered her vow. This wasn't the end. It was a beginning. Her pain began to channel, hardening into a resolve as sharp as steel. Eshe pulled out a worn notebook and a pen, its pages blank, waiting. She would detail everything, every injustice, every name, every date. They may have taken you, my loves, but they will not keep you, and they will pay. I will make sure of it. For 27 years, Eshe Dubois lived a life carved out of quiet resilience in Birmingham, Alabama. Her days were a tapestry of small, demanding jobs, cleaning homes, tending gardens, anything that paid enough to keep a roof over her head and provide the simple tools for her secret war. Her nights, however, were dedicated to a different kind of labor. In the dim glow of a single lamp, surrounded by stacks of borrowed law books and tattered newspapers, Eshe meticulously documented every systemic injustice, every legal loophole she could find. She became a silent scholar of the very system that had stolen her daughters, transforming her pain into a formidable hidden authority. Her aging hands, calloused from work, moved with the precision of a surgeon as she filled her hidden journal. Every year, on the day of their birth, she would whisper the names Zola, Amara, Kiana, tracing the faint, symbolic marks on her own palm, a constant reminder of her vow. Every injustice, every loophole, every name connected, she murmured to the empty room, her voice a fierce whisper. This is for you, my daughters. Each entry was a brick laid in the foundation of their eventual reunion, a testament to her unwavering, strategic focus. While Eshe toiled in obscurity, her daughters, Zola, Amara, and Kiana, blossomed under the opulent care of Thaddeus and Vivian Sterling. They thrived, each achieving remarkable success across continents. Zola, a formidable lawyer in New York, Amara, a compassionate doctor in London, and Kiana, a driven entrepreneur in Los Angeles. Their lives were a vibrant mosaic of privilege and achievement, filled with the kind of opportunities Eshe had only dreamed of for them. They loved Thaddeus and Vivian, their adoptive parents, who had, in their own way, provided a loving home. Yet, beneath the surface of their glittering lives, a subtle current of incompleteness flowed. Sometimes, during their frequent calls, one would pause, a shared, unspoken question hanging in the air. Kiana, ever the most outwardly curious, once voiced the quiet unease that sometimes stirred within them. "Sometimes I just wonder," she mused to her sisters, "what else is out there, about us?" Their bond as triplets, an almost telepathic connection, hinted at a deeper origin, a shared past they couldn't quite articulate. 27 years melted away, indistinguishable from one another, until one ordinary evening. Eshe, now a woman etched with the quiet dignity of enduring hardship, stirred a meager pot of soup in her small kitchen. The television, usually a source of background noise, hummed with a local news segment. Her gaze was distant, lost in the rhythm of the spoon, until a voice cut through the mundane quiet, sharp and clear. "Tonight, we honor 3 remarkable sisters," the announcer declared, his tone celebratory, "Zola Sterling, Amara Sterling, and Kiana Sterling, for their extraordinary success and philanthropic efforts." Eshe's hand froze. The spoon clattered against the ceramic bowl, the sound echoing in the sudden, cavernous silence of the room. Her breath hitched. Sterling. The name, once a brand of betrayal, now held a new, electrifying weight. A surge of adrenaline, cold and fierce, replaced the weary ache in her bones. She leaned closer to the flickering screen, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The camera, as if cued by a divine hand, zoomed in on the Sterling triplets, their faces radiant with success. And then, Eshe saw it. A close-up of Kiana's hand, gesturing gracefully as she spoke, revealed the faint, almost imperceptible mark near her thumb. Then, Amara's, and Zola's. The tiny, symbolic lines, barely visible to the casual eye, were etched into Eshe's memory, as clearly as if she'd made them yesterday. The marks, her beautiful girls, the decades of waiting, the quiet suffering, the meticulous planning, it all coalesced into this single, undeniable truth. There was no despair in Eshe's eyes, no collapse into emotion. Instead, a fierce, knowing glint replaced the shock. Her time had come. With a calm that belied the earthquake within her, Eshe moved to the loose floorboard beneath her bed. She retrieved the worn, heavy journal, its pages overflowing with 27 years of evidence. A plan, decades in the making, now crystallized with breathtaking clarity. In the weeks that followed, Eshe's small apartment became a war room, her kitchen table a desk of destiny. Her fingers, once trembling with despair, now moved with a determined purpose across paper and keyboard. She poured her heart into letters and emails, addressing each to her daughters, carefully explaining her sacrifice and her enduring fierce love. But her messages were more than just emotional pleas. Eshe, the strategist, wove subtle, coded phrases throughout, intimate details only they would recognize, or that would trigger questions about their past. "There was a mark," she wrote, her pen gliding. "A promise, etched not just on your skin, but in my soul. A mother's mark, for a reason you will one day understand." She chose her words with precision, knowing that overt accusations would be dismissed. The goal was curiosity, not immediate belief. She sent them to their publicly listed offices, each envelope and email a small, calculated missile launched into the gilded lives of the Sterling triplets. Miles away, in their respective high-powered offices, Zola, Amara, and Kiana each received an unexpected, unsettling message. Initially, they dismissed the letters and emails as the ramblings of a stranger, perhaps a zealous fan or a crackpot. But the words, Eshe's carefully chosen words, began to prick at their subconscious. That phrase, a mark. It resonated with a vague, unarticulated feeling they'd always harbored. A shared unease began to ripple between them. Amara, calling Zola from her London clinic, was the first to voice the growing confusion. "Did you get a strange letter?" she asked, her voice hushed with intrigue. "About a mark." Soon, Kiana confirmed she'd received one too, detailing an uncanny knowledge of their lives and a cryptic reference to a shared, secret identifier. The sender, this mysterious Eshe Dubois, knew too much, possessed too many intimate details. The seeds of doubt had been expertly planted. The daughters, now united in their bewilderment, began to subtly probe their adoptive parents. Over a tense family dinner, Zola casually mentioned the letters, the strange talk of a mark. Thaddeus and Vivian Sterling, usually so composed, exchanged a swift, almost imperceptible glance. Their smiles tightened. They feigned shock, dismissing the letters as delusional nonsense, and the sender as a, quote, disturbed individual. "Nonsense, darlings," Thaddeus declared, his voice a little too firm. "Pay no mind to such lunacy. Your mother and I are your only family, always have been." But their reactions were visibly strained, their defensiveness betraying a deeper anxiety. Later that night, Eshe, observing from afar, imagined Thaddeus making hushed, frantic phone calls, the faint whir of a paper shredder. His fear of exposure, she knew, was his greatest weakness. The Sterlings' carefully constructed facade was finally beginning to crack. A soft, hesitant knock echoed through Eshe's tiny home, a sound she had anticipated for weeks, yet one that still sent a jolt through her. She rose, her movements measured, a lifetime of waiting culminating in this single moment. Opening the door, Eshe met 3 pairs of eyes, identical in their shape, yet each holding a distinct mixture of shock, pain, and a raw, burning curiosity. Zola, Amara, Kiana, her daughters, grown, elegant, successful. Eshe's heart thrummed, but her face remained a mask of calm resolve. She saw the question in Zola's fierce gaze. "You sent these letters? You're her?" Zola's voice was a whisper, laced with disbelief. Eshe nodded slowly, her gaze sweeping over each beloved face. "I am your birth mother," she confirmed, her voice steady. "And the story you were told, my dears, is only half the truth, a truth I've waited 27 years to tell. It's a story not just of a mother's love, but of unjust systems and impossible choices." She stepped aside, a silent invitation, her eyes holding a promise of revelation. The air crackled with anticipation, a dawning realization beginning to bloom on her daughters' faces. As she led them into her modest living room, the space suddenly feeling smaller under the weight of their presence. She moved to a hidden compartment behind a loose floorboard, retrieving the worn, heavy journal, her life's work. Its pages were a meticulous tapestry of dates, names, legal jargon, and personal observations. "They didn't just adopt you," Eshe began, her voice gaining a quiet authority as she laid the journal open before them. "They weaponized my despair. This isn't abandonment, my loves. This was a forced seizure, carefully planned." She detailed the legal loophole Thaddeus Sterling had exploited, the specific clauses in the adoption papers designed to cut her off entirely, the subtle intimidation tactics. As she watched their faces as the truth unfurled, Zola's jaw tightened, Amara's eyes welled with tears of betrayal, and Kiana's expression hardened into fury. The narrative of their loving, childless adoptive parents crumbled before their eyes. "This is a crime," Zola finally erupted, her lawyer's mind already grasping the profound implications. Eshe felt a quiet triumph bloom in her chest. They believed her. The initial shock gave way to a surge of righteous anger. "They lied to us our entire lives," Kiana exclaimed, her voice thick with betrayal. Amara, usually the calmest, looked at Eshe with profound sorrow and a burgeoning fire. "This isn't just about us, Mama. This is about justice for what they did to you, and to countless others." Eshe felt a warmth spread through her. Seeing her daughter's solidarity, this was the unity she had dreamed of for decades. Zola, ever the strategist, was already flipping through Eshe's journal, her mind racing. "These documents, the dates, your observations, it's all here. This is unassailable." She looked up, her gaze meeting Eshe's, a fierce resolve in her eyes. "Let's expose them. Every single detail." Eshe nodded, a small, knowing smile touching her lips. The long game was finally coming to its decisive end. Her daughters, formidable in their own rights, were now her allies, a united front against the architects of their pain. Weeks later, under the glittering chandeliers of the Sterlings' high-profile charity gala, Eshe felt the weight of 27 years lift. She walked in, head held high, flanked by her 3 magnificent daughters. The air crackled as the media, tipped off by Kiana's contacts, swarmed. Thaddeus and Vivian Sterling, caught mid-smile, froze as Eshe's unwavering gaze locked onto theirs. It was Zola who stepped forward, her voice cutting through the polite hum of the room, amplified by a discreet microphone. "My birth mother, Eshe Dubois, was not an abandonment case." The words hit like a thunderclap. "She was a victim of systemic exploitation, orchestrated by these 2 people, Thaddeus and Vivian Sterling." Zola presented copies of Eshe's meticulously gathered evidence, detailing the legal manipulation. Thaddeus's face drained of color, Vivian's smile contorted into a desperate grimace. Their denials were drowned out by the flashing cameras and the collective gasp of the horrified guests. Eshe watched them, unblinking, as their carefully constructed world crumbled around them. Days after the gala, the story exploded. Eshe, supported by her daughters, stood at a press conference, not just for personal vindication, but for a broader cause. The wall of microphones and flashing lights were a stark contrast to the dim solitude of her past. "This isn't just my story," Eshe declared, her voice resonating with quiet power. "It's the story of countless mothers, vulnerable women exploited by a system that prioritizes wealth and privilege over human dignity." She detailed the specific legal loopholes, the biases that allowed the Sterlings' actions, and advocated for comprehensive legal reforms to protect mothers and ensure ethical adoption practices. Eshe saw the journalist scribbling furiously, the impact of her words rippling outward. This was more than revenge. It was a movement. Her long-held strategy, born of desperation, had blossomed into a force for genuine systemic change. It was a victory not just for her, but for all the unseen mothers. The fallout was swift and severe. News reports, streamed across every channel, showed Thaddeus and Vivian Sterling stripped of their arrogance, facing a barrage of legal charges. Their once impeccable reputations were in tatters, their vast assets frozen, their power dismantled. Eshe watched a news segment from her small television, her daughters gathered around her. The Sterlings, crestfallen expressions in court, the headlines proclaiming their disgrace. It was a quiet vindication. Eshe felt a profound sense of justice fulfilled, not just for herself, but for the countless others whose suffering had gone unacknowledged. The system, once so impenetrable, had been cracked open by her decades of meticulous effort, and her daughters' unwavering support. The battle was won, the antagonists vanquished, their reign of quiet cruelty brought to a definitive end. Months later, Eshe's home was transformed. No longer tiny and sparse, it hummed with warmth, laughter, and the constant, comforting presence of her daughters. Zola, Amara, and Kiana, making up for lost time, had lovingly renovated the space, filling it with light and life. They shared meals, stories, and the easy banter of a family finally whole. One evening, as they sat together, Eshe held her daughters' hands. She traced the faint, almost invisible marks on their palms, her secret vow made 27 years ago. Now, these marks were not symbols of loss or a desperate sacrifice, but of reclamation, of an unbreakable bond forged in truth and justice. Eshe looked at their radiant faces, her heart overflowing. "My beautiful girls," she whispered, tears finally blurring her vision. "We are finally home." Zola squeezed her hand. "And we're not going anywhere, Mama." The journey had been long, arduous, but the triumph of family, of love, was absolute.